Hi everybody, today we're going to be talking about lesson 69, finding equivalent fractions by multiplying by 1. So first, let's remember that an equivalent fraction, or let me back up. Let's start with this. Let's start with the identity property of multiplication. The identity property of multiplication says, and write this down please, when a number is multiplied by 1, the value does not change. So when we apply this to fractions, this 1 is going to be a fraction. For example, 3/3, 15/15ths, 100 100ths. It doesn't matter, but all of these, all three of these, are equivalent to 1. So let's see how this applies then to our problems. So here in problem number 1, by what name for 1 should 3/4 be multiplied to make 6/8? Okay, well that sounds kind of confusing. But if we look over here at our problem, I see here kind of in this light blue that it has the number 1 outlined with 2 question marks for the numerator and denominator of the fraction. So what this is asking is 3/4 times what fraction, which is equivalent to 1, the numerator and denominator are the same, will equal 6/8. So there are a couple of steps to this. Step number 1, figure out what the denominator is. And I do that by asking myself, 4 times what equals to 8? This is the fraction I'm trying to equal here. So 4 times what will equal 8? Okay? Well, I know that that question mark is going to equal 2. 4 times 2 equals 8. So I have figured out my denominator. It's going to be a 2. Step 2, come up with my fraction equal to 1. Well, if 2 is my denominator, then 2 must be my numerator. 2/2 is equivalent to 1. Okay? So here's my fraction, and then step 3 is going to be to check my work. So 3/4 times 2/2, does that actually equal 6/8 like I want it to? When I multiply fractions, I multiply the numerators. 3 times 2 equals 6. And I multiply the denominators. 4 times 2 equals 8. So yes, 3/4 times 2/2 does equal 6/8. So what is that question mark fraction equivalent to 1? My answer then that I box is 2/2. Okay, let's go on and look at number 2. Keeping in mind our steps, find the denominator, find the fraction equal to 1, and then check your work. So example 2, write a fraction equal to 2/3 that has a denominator of 12. So 2/3 equals how many 12ths? So I'm going to set this problem up. 2/3 times what fraction equal to 1 equals x over 12. And I'm going to change this from a question mark to an x because we've actually been using question marks here. So I'm going to figure this out by saying 4 times what equals 12? Well, I know that 3 times 4 equals 12. So this, actually we're going to move this. So this denominator is going to become a 4. There's step 1, I found my denominator. Step 2, make the fraction equivalent to 1. So my numerator also becomes 4. And now I multiply the numerators. 2 times 4 then equals 8. So x equals 8. So 8/12 is equal to 2, excuse me, 2/3. Okay, so I had to find, even though it didn't show it in the problem up here, I still needed to find what that fraction equivalent to 1 was in order to solve the problem. All right, example 3. Write a fraction equal to 1/3 that has a denominator of 12. Then write a fraction equal to 1/4 that has a denominator of 12. What is the sum of the two fractions you just made? Okay, this is a 3-step problem. Okay, step 1, step 2, and step 3. So let's take this one at a time. Step 1, write a fraction equal to 1/3 that has a denominator of 12. So 1/3 times something over something equals something twelfths. So 3 times what equals 12? 3 times 4 equals 12. So my fraction equivalent to 1 becomes 4/4. And now I multiply the numerators. 1 times 4 equals 4. Okay, so here's my answer to part 1. 1/3 is equivalent to 4/12. Part 2, then write a fraction equal to 1/4 that has a denominator of 12. So 1/4 times something over something equals 12ths. Well, 4 times what equals 12? 4 times 3 equals 12. There's my denominator. I make this a fraction equivalent to 1, 3/3. I multiply the numerators. 1 times 3 equals 3. And 3/12 is the answer to part 2. Part 3 says then, what is the sum of the two fractions you made? So I'm going to add 4/12 plus 3/12. Now remember, when you add the numerators. 4 plus 3 equals 7, but when you add, the denominator does not change, which is why my answer then is 7/12. Okay, so I found the equivalent fraction of 1/3, the equivalent fraction of 1/4, and then I added them together. Okay, example 4. Write 3/4 as a fraction with a denominator of 100. Then write that fraction as a percent. Okay, so step 1, 3/4 times something equals a fraction with denominator of 100ths. So 4 times what equals 100? I like to think of it like money, okay? 4 quarters or 25. So 4 times 25 equals 100. Here's my denominator. I make it the same numerator since it's a fraction equivalent to 1. I multiply the numerators. 3 times 25 is 75. So my fraction is 75 over 100, or 75/100ths, which is equal to 75%. Okay, so first I wrote out the problem. I found the denominator, changed it to a fraction equivalent to 1, multiplied the numerator, got my fraction answer, and then converted that to a percent. Okay, that's it for the examples today. Off to your lesson practice, and I will see you in the morning.